There are moments in Formula One where everything just stops. Not because of a crash, not because of a red flag, but because someone says something so raw, so real, that it slices through all the noise. That's exactly what happened when Lewis Hamilton, yes, that Lewis Hamilton, sat down after a brutal weekend in Hungary and said, "I'm useless. They probably need to change driver." Think about that for a second. This is a 7-time world champion, one of the most decorated drivers in the history of the sport, who has fought tooth and nail across decades, calling himself useless on live TV. Not in some PR-filtered post, not in vague, cryptic language. He just said it. And that silence you heard afterward, that was the entire F1 paddock holding its breath. Because Hungary wasn't just a bad weekend, it was a public unraveling. Q2 elimination, 12 on the grid, no points, no pace. Meanwhile, his teammate, Charles Leclerc, was flying. Pole position, eyes on the prize. The contrast couldn't have been more glaring, and that made Lewis's words sting even harder. This wasn't just a veteran having a rough day. This was a man who looked in the mirror and didn't like who he saw. But the real story is not about the low point. It's about what came after. Enter Toto Wolff, the man who's been in Hamilton's corner through the highest highs. The 6 world titles with Mercedes, they didn't just fall into place. Wolff and Hamilton built that empire brick by brick, so when Toto speaks now, after Hamilton's emotional spiral, you pay attention. And what he said wasn't sugar-coated or wrapped in PR-safe comfort. It was honest, it was emotional, and it was powerful. He didn't deny the mess in Hungary. He didn't pretend like the internet wasn't going insane with retirement theories. Instead, he reminded the world who Lewis Hamilton really is. A fighter, an emotional human being, a man who's never hidden from his own darkness. According to Toto, this wasn't weakness. It was transparency, and then came the kicker. Wolff said the thing nobody else had the guts to say, that Lewis Hamilton is still the greatest. No asterisks, no footnotes, not was the greatest or used to be. He is the greatest. That hit different, because in the heat of the moment, when the media is clawing at you, when the fans are screaming for answers, when your teammate is flying and you're drowning, it's easy to forget your own worth. Hamilton did, just for a moment. But Toto didn't, and neither should we. Now layer on top of that the cryptic Instagram drop, a black and white teaser, a matchbox, the phrase, "We've struck the match, now follow the smoke," and a date, August 8th. That was it. No explanation, no caption. Just fuel to an already blazing inferno of speculation. People lost their minds. Was Hamilton retiring? Was he dropping some massive non-racing project? Was he coming back to Mercedes? Was he starting his own damn team? No one had a clue, and that's exactly what made it genius. Because suddenly, the guy who looked defeated after Hungary now looked like he was in control again, like he knew something we didn't. Like this wasn't a collapse, it was a setup. And somewhere in that chaos, something became clear. The problem wasn't Lewis Hamilton. The problem was everyone forgetting who the hell he is. Ferrari knew this wasn't going to be easy. Bringing in a titan like Lewis Hamilton was never just about speed or points, it was about rewriting the team's DNA. But even they probably didn't expect the emotional turbulence that came with it. The guy they signed wasn't just another driver with a fancy resume, he was an empire, a mindset, a man who's used to operating on his terms, with machinery built around his instincts, and an entire team calibrated to his rhythm. At Mercedes, it was a symphony. At Ferrari, it's still sheet music. And while the Tifosi were dreaming of championship parades through the streets of Monza, reality has been colder. The Ferrari car, fast in the right hands, but twitchy and moody under pressure, hasn't been to Hamilton's style. He's used to stability under braking, surgical steering input, a rear end that doesn't bite. This car? It's aggressive, unforgiving. Leclerc has adapted to its chaos. Hamilton, still wrestling with it, but that hasn't stopped him from trying to mold the team. He's been in meetings longer than most. He's pushed engineers, challenged strategy calls, even taken a hands-on role in sim work. This isn't a paycheck gig. Hamilton wants to build something. That's what makes the Hungary breakdown hurt even more, because you could see the frustration wasn't just about the car. It was about effort not paying off. And behind all this, Pressure, tons of it, from fans, from sponsors, from the Italian media who love a hero until they don't. They romanticize the Hamilton-Ferrari marriage as destiny, but now, 3 quarters into the season with 0 podiums and whispers of internal friction, the honeymoon's over. Even Leclerc, the supposed golden boy, has felt the ripple. He could have let Hamilton take the fall, could have said nothing and let the narrative spiral. But he didn't. He stood up and defended the guy, called Hungary a fluke, said Hamilton was still one of the best. That took guts and maturity, because let's be honest, most teammates would have stayed silent and let the hierarchy settle itself, but Leclerc gets it. He knows this isn't about ego wars or media noise, it's about survival. Ferrari's not just trying to win races, they're trying to claw their way back into relevance, and that requires unity, not rivalry. Still, even unity doesn't fix a difficult car. The numbers don't lie. Hamilton's behind in the standings, behind in raw pace, and visibly drained. For a guy used to dominating, that's a brutal adjustment. He's not just fighting the stopwatch, he's fighting doubt. And yet, he's still here, still testing, still posting, still dropping cryptic messages like breadcrumbs. He hasn't checked out, not even close. Toto Wolff said it best, Lewis isn't declining, he's evolving. What we're watching isn't the downfall of a legend. It's a man forcing his next chapter into existence, even if it's messy, even if it means public failure, because Hamilton's career was never built on playing it safe. He's always made the risky moves. Leaving McLaren for Mercedes in 2013 was laughed at. Now it's seen as genius. So who's to say this Ferrari move won't follow the same arc? Maybe that August 8th teaser isn't a retirement plan. Maybe it's a warning shot, a reminder that even when he's down, Hamilton is always working on something bigger, something no one else sees coming until it's already in motion. And that's the scariest part for the rest of the grid. Because if Ferrari and Hamilton do figure this out, if they align the car with his vision and silence the noise, there's not a team on the planet that's ready for that comeback. August 8th finally hit and the internet lost its mind. Hamilton's mysterious post? It turned out to be the launch of a new global youth initiative under Mission 44, focused on mentorship, education, and access for underrepresented communities. No retirement, no F1 bombshell, just a passion project from a man who refuses to be defined by one bad race or one slow season. But even though the announcement wasn't racing still said everything. Right after Hungary, right in the middle of the noise. It was Lewis Hamilton flipping the narrative without saying a word, showing the world that while everyone was busy writing his obituary, he was out there building something real, something lasting. That's the thing about Hamilton, he doesn't just race cars. He races time and legacy. Still, Ferrari couldn't afford to ignore the storm. Inside Maranello, conversations shifted from just car performance to emotional management. The leadership started revisiting how they were integrating Hamilton into the ecosystem. Because it wasn't just about giving him a fast car, it was about building trust, a culture where someone like Lewis could thrive. Ferrari has always been loud, passionate, reactive. Hamilton? He's intense but methodical. They had to meet in the middle. There were changes. Behind closed doors, communication structures were tweaked. Engineers who'd worked with Hamilton and Mercedes were brought in as consultants. Even simulator routines were adjusted to fit his feedback loop better. Ferrari started to listen, not just talk, because if they were going to go all in on this era, it had to be built around both of their drivers, not just the one who is performing right now. The emotional weight wasn't just on Lewis either. The fans had begun to split. Some were frustrated, others remained loyal, but the hardcore Ferrari faithful were confused. They didn't know whether to defend their new icon or criticize him for not delivering. The result? A pressure cooker of expectations. And yet, through all of that, Hamilton showed up. Not just physically, but mentally. He leaned into the pain instead of running from it, started doing more media, started talking about the work being done behind the scenes, even started cracking jokes again. There was a quiet defiance in his energy. He knew he wasn't done. And the paddock started to sense it too. Whispers turned into nods, nods turned into respect. Because even if you hate Hamilton, you can't deny the grind. Most drivers would have spiraled. Most would have coasted on their past glory. Lewis, he was in the trenches, asking for more. Then came the post-summer races, and something shifted. Not overnight, not dramatically, but noticeably. His pace improved. Strategy errors decreased. The car began to respond more predictably. He wasn't winning, but he was fighting again, fighting in a way that said, I'm still here, and just like that, the conversation changed. Suddenly it wasn't, is Hamilton finished? It was, what if he pulls this off? The idea of Ferrari becoming a championship threat again, with him leading the charge, no longer sounded like fantasy. It sounded like the kind of chaos Formula One lives for. Because if there's one thing this sport loves more than a dominant champion, it's a redemption arc, a comeback story. And right now that story has a name: Lewis Hamilton. Not as the guy who broke records, not as the guy who wore 7 crowns, but as the man who got knocked down in the red suit, told the world he was done, and decided to rise anyway. That's not just racing, that's legend.